everybody, my name's Hannah Cox, as I'm sure that you know already. I'm the founder and managing director at Gallup Executive, and we are a specialist executive search firm specialising in senior recruitment across operations, digital and marketing, with a unique focus on customer experience. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Rhona Bradshaw, who is a Chief Digital Officer and Operating Advisor, previously worked at Comcast and Liberty Global. I mean, is there any more? I've just realised I'm about to hand over to you for an introduction, and I've just stolen your thunder and made your introduction for you. So is there anything more that you'd like to add to that, Rhona?
Steal away, Hannah. Steal away anytime. No, I think you nailed it. I am currently an operating advisor for a couple of PE-backed AI platforms. I have a real interest at the moment in helping businesses really get their narrative and go-to-market plans in a way that can really feel like they add value and kind of drive a lot of impact. So I've been lucky enough to be spending a lot of time with some really great people doing some really interesting things in the AI space, which is always good from a digital perspective. So, but lovely to be here, and I'm thrilled that we're having this chat. It's been great to know you all these years.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's particularly exciting because you're doing all this revolutionary innovative stuff, and actually what we're talking about. So this is part of the podcast series, Unicorns and Dark Horses, Diverse Leadership Legends. But the subject to our podcast is plot twist, the executive mother. So whilst remaining at the forefront of innovation and tech, Rhona Bradshaw, we've had kind of a surprise twist to your story. Yeah. So let's jump straight in with some of these questions, shall we? So ultimately, what is the story behind your career taking a plot twist into motherhood?
Yes, plot twist is a great way of putting it, actually. Complete and dark horse, because it was a complete shock. But about 2.5 years ago, I had my son Alexander James Hunter, and here in America, I'm living just outside Philadelphia, and it was a complete out of the blue. I was about to turn 43, and motherhood just was not on the plans, quite frankly. I had at that point nearly 20 years working in cable and telecoms. I've had such a great journey, kind of climbing the ladder, being present in so many great changes from within the telecom space, and have had the opportunity to be in the Ireland and in the UK and Europe and now here in the US, that quite frankly over the years, despite kind of assuming we would have kids, it just didn't kind of come to fruition. We had a couple of miscarriages and an ectopic, and it was just maybe the universe saying, not for now. And Ian, my husband, has a wonderful daughter. She's my bonus daughter who I met when she was 6. And, that had always filled my cup up. I had always had her around. And so there was never this yearning that actually having a kid was necessary for me from a success perspective in life. And we have such a full life that it was, if it was meant to be, it was meant to be. And go all the way through to December 22, we had my parents over for Christmas. It was the first big Christmas after COVID had kind of unlocked everything. My brother was over with his now wife, and we just had the time of our lives. We had a great old time. And coming out of that Christmas celebration, I decided to do a dry January to try and kind of recharge the body. And at the end of January, I discovered we were 6 weeks pregnant. And by God, was I bowled over and completely and utterly shocked. And I don't think I breathed out until September 20th, when Alexander arrived, because it was such a shock to the system. And I found myself leading a massive enterprise of transformation and innovation. I was Chief Digital Officer for Comcast cable organization, so 32 million customers, had a team of about 200 people, all focused on just driving change through customer experience. And was just so focused on my career and continuing to climb that ladder that just motherhood at that point in time I thought was a distant concept. But somebody else had something other planned for me, I think. And I found myself looking at being nearly 43 and trying to figure out, like, what did this all mean? And how would I continue, quite frankly, to remain focused and interesting at work without being defined as being the woman having a baby, quite frankly. And yeah, the rest is history.
It's I mean, I've got a huge smile on my face here because we spoke like just before you found out that you were pregnant, and then the next time I speak to you're just so blasé, and it just kind of dropped into the conversation that you just had a baby, and I was like, wait, what? What did you just say that you've got a baby? How's that happened? And I remember saying, how's that happened? What, don't tell me that. Obviously, I know how it happened, but I mean, you were just so like almost like blah. It's like water off a duck's back, sort of thing, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember that conversation, and that you had that smile across your face then as well. And it was then that you said, "Oh my God, we've got to do a podcast about this." Yeah, look, we had a career has always been the thing personally that I have felt defined, like, who I am and what I wanted to accomplish in life. I've always been that person. Like, I knew at 12 what I wanted to study in college, and I knew what businesses I wanted to work for and the jobs I wanted to do. So I was always fixated on climbing the ladder. And I think if you ask my friends from home, they would say I was always just that kind of powerhouse of career. And I started my role in Ireland with Liberty Global and then moved to England, and nobody was surprised that we kept moving, and then America happened, and it was just always part of our story. And Ian and I never felt like we needed to fill a gap or have a yearning to kind of add to our family, because, as I said, we had Olivia, and then we added our fur babies, Chester and Monty, along the way. And so we just felt good about life. And I suppose I probably was always a little bit terrified about the choice, in my opinion, that I would have had to make between being a mom and being in having a career. And I was always afraid that if I did fall pregnant, my God, how would I tell people? The embarrassment of having to tell, like, a boss that you were pregnant, and that you would be, automatically they'd put you in a box that you'd be gone for at least 12 months in the UK and Ireland. And that, like, just scared me. And I just never wanted to feel like I had to take my foot off the throttle, quite frankly. And actually the thing, and I know we'll talk about it, but, like, the biggest surprise for me is all of the things that I worried about became less of a problem when it actually happened. And I think in some ways because of the age I was, and in some ways because of the choices I knew I could make, but in other ways, I think just the world that we live in today and the reality that, you can kind of be both.
I mean, it's such a shame that as women, we, not necessarily that we're made to feel that way, just that we end up feeling that way.
Yeah.
In business, that that we might be put at a disadvantage against our male peers for promotions, and how are we now going to be perceived, and how is it going to change us, etc. But I mean, just leading on from that, I mean, what assumptions did you have about motherhood as an executive that turned out to be completely wrong?
I had a few, one, I assumed that I was going to have to choose one from between one and the other. And I've been really lucky that I haven't. I mean, I think I've definitely changed, like, how I do certain things and the way I approach certain, like, my day, as an example. Like, it's important for me to drop him to school. He's in daycare now, and to, be home at night time so that we can hang out in the evening time. So, like, my days have kind of been rearranged, but I kind of never assumed that there would be the flexibility for those days to be rearranged in the first instance. Mostly, though, I always assumed that I wouldn't have a choice in how I felt my whole kind of landscape would look once I had a kid. I assumed, like, I would have to take a year off. I assumed I would have to take a pause and a slow down in my career for a few years. And I've just been very lucky that one, I came back and I was promoted, which was a complete, like a massive thing for me because it was a recognition that, you know, it is possible to continue to grow and to thrive. And secondly, I personally chose a lot of things that I think were right for me, but may not have been right for others. So like I chose to only take 6 weeks off. I like everybody jokes that literally like I sent the text message a few hours after a C-section and was on a call a few days later. Like I chose to stay very involved despite feeling like I had taken really a back seat because in my head that was kind of what was working for me. And I think the biggest assumption was that you kind of have to conform to everything that you know society has kind of defined as being what it looks like to be a working mom. And if anything, that's my biggest takeaway, that actually like design it for you, for your life, for your family's life, and don't be apologetic about it. Because actually, I think the more we just try and figure out how, you know, all this world now fits together, the faster that we can kind of figure out how to just thrive in it and make the most of it, quite frankly. And I'm glad that I had those things wrong because I assumed there would have to be a lot more like fitting into boxes.
Mm. It's interesting because somebody said to me the other day that they thought that I was quite an unconventional mother. And I
Yeah.
took it as like a bit. I was a bit offended at the time, and
Yeah, I can imagine.
I didn't dive deeply into what they actually meant. But
Yeah,
actually, since they said it, I've been consciously looking at other family dynamics around me, and I actually think that other people are more unconventional than how I am. I mean, my kids have a great life. You know, that they see a strong, independent, a businesswoman, a real
yeah,
go-getter in
yeah,
life as a mother, and surely that's a great thing for our children
yeah.
to aspire to.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I mean, I want my son to grow up having witnessed firsthand what it means to have a very strong, independent, super loving and caring mother who didn't let her own dreams go by the wayside just to create his dreams. And I want him to live a life that is full. Like he has been on 50 flights since he was born. He's 2.5. He has better air miles than I have. And he like travels the world. He is super sociable. He, you
Yeah.
know, and I just think there is no one way fits all. And I think actually for me growing up, and probably part of why I had so many of those assumptions, and probably the reason why I was so anxious about having kids. I remember like when we had our first miscarriage, and I remember being like, dare I say it, relieved because the thought of me was, oh my God, I've literally just got promoted to my job in the UK, and I now have to like really focus on making sure that I can take the next step. And what would happen if I had to step away and take, you know, the conformed like uniform 12 months, 6 to 12 months off, and how would that all fit in with my plans? And that created a lot of anxiety for me. And I think the fact that, you know, we haven't always had role models growing up where you've been able to see strong business women whilst having kids also continue to grow their careers and build them. And I certainly was
Mhm.
lucky enough to see a couple of women back in my early days in Liberty Global have kids, but then be very present still with their careers. And I know a lot of people kind of would have been surprised by that actually and thought, oh, they should be already out. We shouldn't hear from them from 12 months. And I think the more women that do things differently, whatever different looks like, the better for like our children, sons, daughters, everybody, and the better for business and the better for just, I think, for society in general, because it'll have like every color, it'll be a cacophony of every kind of way of doing it. And I think to your point, that unconventional will be people that just kind of conform to like one way instead of doing what's right for themselves.
And I think that having our approach as well. I mean, I am really, really passionate about bringing up resilient children that are fit for the big bad world, because it's ugly when you get to adulthood. And our children, they need to be able to cope with that, and therefore they can't have things that are their way all of the time, and they do need to see struggles, you know, when we're under pressure at work and have to cope with being second sometimes and stuff. And I think kind of your approach to when you had that first miscarriage, that is testament to your always pulling a positive out of every situation, and that will be a fundamental reason as to why you coped with the surprise baby. You know, it's an executive level, and just kind of intertwined into your life relatively easily.
Yeah, it just happened. Like you laugh about how I told you. I like, we didn't tell really anybody. We were literally holding our breaths, and we were shocked completely. Like, we didn't tell family and friends until 15, 16, 17 weeks. And I would tell you, if it was still had been COVID times, I probably would have got away for much longer if I didn't have to tell anybody. Because it was kind of like, if you talk about it, then it's real. And if it's real, this can't be happening. Like, Ian was about to turn 50 and I was turning 43. It was like weird. But we told nobody at work. And eventually around like week 18, 19, Ian was like, you're just going to have to tell somebody so that God forbid anything happens, you know, you can call on them. So I told my boss, and he said to me, he was like, you look like you want to talk about something. I said, yeah, I do. Yeah, I've got something to tell you. He said, is it good or bad? I was like, you can be the judge of it. And I told him, and he was thrilled, obviously, but he was sworn to secrecy for another few weeks. And eventually, the day after Mother's Day here in the US in May, he said to me, please tell somebody, tell everybody, because I can't be responsible with letting this secret out. So I literally got onto a Teams chat and sent a Teams chat out to my team and to the leadership team and went, hi, everybody, some news. I'm pregnant. Okay, thanks. Let's not talk about it. And moved on. And everyone's like, did you just read that? But it was just again our way of like, we move, we keep moving, we keep doing this, and just trying to stay in control of it. I think that was my big takeaway, like trying to hold on to whatever semblance of control I could hold on to, knowing that life was going to be very different when he had arrived, you know.
Yeah, bless you. It's great. I mean, did becoming a mother change how you show up as a leader, or how others respond to you?
Yeah, I think I show up quite differently, actually. I think it's made me much more empathetic. And I would argue that I'm quite an empathetic person in general, but I think it's made me more aware of how my actions have impact on other people's choices and decisions within kind of the team that I lead. But I also think it's made me more aware of the struggles that people might have on a day-to-day basis, and that just because I don't have them or I deal with them differently doesn't kind of dilute them or change them or take away the impact. And I remember a couple of women in my team all were having babies a few months after I had Alexander. And because I had taken 6 weeks off, there was a bit of a general assumption that I had then created a precedence that I personally wouldn't be happy with people taking longer than 6 weeks out. And I really felt that needed to be nipped in the bud pretty quickly. And I remember having conversations with them individually, but also as a whole, and saying, look, I did what I felt was right for me, for my choice, my decision. And I kind of said, look, we've live in a world where like we've always been fighting for something, fighting for a voice, fighting for a seat, fighting for our choice in whatever realm is the reality. And I think we continue to be apologetic about certain choices, and we continue to feel like we've got to be led by certain decisions. And I was like, I just want you all to be very clear. You choose what's right for you. If you need to be out for it's 12, 16 weeks here in the US, that or longer, do it. If you need to be back earlier, do it. If you need something in the middle, do it. Like, as long as I think you can make the right choice for you, that's what's important. And I think before I had Alexander, I wouldn't have been so conscious of underscoring that choice that I had made and aware of the impact that that choice would have had on other people. And I've also started to be a lot more considerate, I think, of people with kids or with like situations where they're caring for parents at home or whatever it might be. But like, because I'm very pragmatic, to our conversation earlier, like I just get up and go, keep moving, things don't knock me hugely. I sometimes in the past would have failed to recognize that that's not everybody and people process differently, etc. And so I've tried, and I continue to try, to be a lot more considerate of those kind of differences that we all have, but do it in a way that also allows me to explain and underscore why I'm doing what I'm doing, so that people don't feel like I'm trying to, you know, push them in a certain way or have assumptions that, you know, it's my way or the highway.
I think everybody has different coping mechanisms, don't they? And you know, not that it's this isn't kind of a, I'm not saying this that you have kind of a flippant approach, but this kind of carry on, because I'm very similar. We know this, I'm very similar. This kind of carry on regardless sort of a mentality. That is a coping mechanism in itself.
Correct, completely. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that, like, I look back on the 9 months and genuinely, you know, we just got on with it. There wasn't, like, I joked with people would say, how are you doing? I was like, you didn't care how I was doing before you found out. Now you care how I'm doing. Like, no, we don't talk about this. We keep going. And I'm just pregnant. I'm not terminally ill. I'm just pregnant. But I agree, it is my coping mechanism. And I think it can come across as being cold or flippant, to your point, or inconsiderate, quite frankly, of what others have been through. And it's not meant to be that. It's just my coping mechanism. But what I try and do is I try and articulate my why, so that, you know, the reverse isn't true either, where, you know, there's not presumptions, etc., being made of me that then assumes I expect certain kind of situations. And I think as a leader, like, when I found out I was pregnant, was one of the most senior people in the consumer organization in Comcast at the time. And that brings a lot of heaviness, you know, it brings a lot of expectation. It brings a lot of assumptions that you're behaving in a certain way, with the benefit of people being able to learn from you. And so my choice of taking 6 weeks, my choice of, you know, being so kind of chatty about the situation, was all being, you know, consumed by people that were more junior than I was in both age and level, all of whom were looking to me now as the representation of somebody in their 40s at a significant career level having a kid. And I had to just be very aware of that, not lose who I was, but try and equally articulate that, you know, this is what choice is all about. And this is what we've all strived to try and create for ourselves. And that, you know, good looks like whatever you need it to look like.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, to tie up the podcast, then, I mean, what single piece of advice would you give to a woman approaching senior leadership who's considering motherhood later in life?
I would have to say that it's possible. I mean, I think I would be wrong if I didn't. I would probably say to, you know, assume that everything is possible. Assume that you will have the choice to be able to determine if you want to have kids at that, like, later in life, if you want to continue being an executive, if you want to be able to do both. I think if we start to throttle our dreams or dilute them or change them just because we live and aspire for the, like, ultimate being able to have it all, I think we shortchange ourselves and we will lose out on the opportunities that come around the corner. I think I personally felt that I wasn't going to be able to do both. And if anything, because of the huge surprise and it really been taken out of our hands, I'm so glad that I've been given the ability to see both sides and being able to really see that, like, the journey I went on from a career perspective was so worth it. And actually, I can be an even better executive now that I have him at home to kind of showcase what I'm trying to accomplish. I think it's also, though, given me a great perspective on what I want the future to look like. And what my career journey will look like in my next chapter and over the next 10 years. And it'll look a little bit different to what it was for the last 20 years, but that's okay, because not only is it about having him, I've also changed. And I think the journey that I've been on has given me the ability to kind of realize that there's a big, bright world out there that, once you continue to push the doors for yourself, show up how you want to show up and aspire to be great and have great things, that all of those things will start to land, and that it all becomes possible.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because this is really cheesy, but I love cheese. More cheese, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But I too. I mean, I had my daughter Harriet when I was 36, and my son when I was 38, and I grew up through those first few decades, just thinking, no, I want to live my life first, and then have my children. But now I've realised that actually my life has just begun with my children, and it's given me a purpose now for my work, and it's changed me as a business professional, and all of those things that you've just said. But I mean, that's brilliant, Rhona, and I'm sure that lots of aspiring and current mothers will take an incredible amount away from that. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for making me talk about it. It has definitely provided purpose, but it's given a great story as well at the same time. So thanks for having me.
Hasn't it just? It was, it was. It's a good one, Rhona. It's a good one. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Thank you.